Welcome to 5 Minutes with KeRusso. We're in this last part of Ruth, and this is a great part. I've been excited about this video for a long time, and I hope you will be. I'm going to rush through it, so I'm hoping you're going to spend some time considering the things that I share with you, and that you will spend some time, a lot more time in Ruth than what I've given you. This last part of Ruth is where God sets everything right, and I mean He sets everything right on a scale that you and I would never conceive of, but God does. Here's what's going on. Read this for yourself. Ruth chapter 4, God sets things right for Ruth, who has left everything and to come under the shelter of His wings. He's provided for her a guardian redeemer in Boaz. She's not going to be destitute. She's not somebody who's going to be overlooked. She is now somebody who's going to be highly exalted in her town. She has a husband in Boaz who's a great man. She's going to have a child whose name is going to be Obed, and that's significant. But this child, the writer is intentional, saying God is the one who enabled to have the child. The Lord enabled to have this child. Now we know that's the case. But the writer is pointing out that God is working for Ruth here, and this is beautiful. Okay, but He's not just working for Ruth; He's also working for Naomi, because Naomi comes back into the story here. If you look there in verse 16 and following, or verse 14 and following, Naomi gets her guardian redeemer, and it's not Boaz; it's the child born to Ruth. He is the one who is going to take care of her in her old age. His name is Obed, which means serving. He's going to serve her. He's going to get the inheritance. He's going to carry on the family line. And the family line he's going to carry on is going to be really, really special. And so Naomi goes from being Mara, bitter, to being back to one whose life has been blessed and prosperous. So she's known as Naomi at the end of the book. God sets things right for her. He set things right for the nation of Israel. Remember, I shared with you at the end of Judges, the very last line is that in those days, Israel had no king, and everyone did as they saw fit. Well, when you read Judges, especially the last chapters, you're going to read some of the most despicable stories you'll read in all of the Bible, in my opinion. And that's what happens when people do as they see fit. They needed a king, somebody to point them to God, to guide them, to lead them to God. Well, God has already been working on this. You go back to Genesis chapter 48, the man named Jacob, or Israel, pronounces blessings on all of his children. And Judah gets a blessing that through his lineage is going to come a king for Israel, specifically through Perez, his son. Well, you look here in Ruth chapter 4, verse 18, Perez is mentioned again, and the genealogy of Judah is picked up. And it ends with verse 22, where it says, Obed, child of Ruth, becomes the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David. Now, who is David? The greatest human king that Israel ever had. He is the king that has a heart after God. So what is happening here is, at the very end of Ruth, we're being told that through Ruth is going to come this king. And this king is going to be a blessing and point people back to God. David's going to do that better than any of his descendants. Ultimately, that line of kings, from a human standpoint, is going to fail. It's a complicated story about the king. And it's 1 Samuel. Israel rejects God as their king and wants a human king. So God raises up Saul, then ultimately He raises up David, and that's the line He's going to work through. Read the last 6 Psalms, Psalm 145 through 150. You'll read that God is back on the throne. He's the king. That's when it works best, when He's king. Ultimately, His son is going to be king, Jesus. Jesus is going to be proclaimed King of Kings and Lord of Lords in the book of Revelation. In Acts chapter 2, when Peter preaches about Jesus' resurrection, he says He wasn't just raised from the dead. He was raised to be both Lord and Messiah, or Lord and Anointed One. That's the key. Jesus was raised to be Lord and King. He's the reason why we're baptized, and that's the reason why we're baptized, is to let him be king of our life, our lives. Life works best when we have a king. Now in America, United States, we don't really buy into that, but we need to buy into it in this sense, this scale, because God's working on this magnificent scale of giving us a king that can point us to him, that can lead us to him, and that's when life is good, when everything works right. God works on a scale you and I cannot imagine, and you see that here in Ruth. Spend some time thinking about that, okay? Now we'll see you again on Friday when we talk about this king and we hear him teach about how to follow him. So we'll see you on Friday. Be blessed, and I hope this book of Ruth has blessed you in many, many ways and will continue to do so.